that we're going to change a little bit in the rhythm of the meetings, because we have a big task at hand for Kingdom Alliance. We believe there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done in this world, as we live in anticipation of the return of Christ. And there are a few things that relate to that are very close, very dear to our hearts, that we want to share about. And just let me share a few things about that. But before I do that, I want to go with you to Ephesians 2, which has become a very central chapter for Kingdom Alliance. Actually, the whole book of Ephesians is just, it's just filled with nuggets of gold and of wisdom, as we try to be Jesus' body in the time we live in today. That is, there's so much there. Also, Matthew 24:14 speaks about that the gospel of the kingdom needs to be proclaimed to all nations, and then the end will come. That is a very important thing that's on our radar as an association, as a network of leaders and ministries. But there's something else that is also, I believe, connected in with the timeline that God has for this world and towards the return of Jesus, of Yeshua, and it's clearly described in Ephesians, and in particular Ephesians chapter 2. So I want to read a few verses from verse 11. It says this: "Therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands, remember that you were at one time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world." Well, that's where it starts, the whole train of thought of the Apostle Paul, or Shaul, as he was still called, obviously, to his Jewish brethren. But I like the reminder that Paul gives here to the non-Jews that are under his audience in this letter, that we're separated from Christ, alienated from the citizenship of Israel, or the Commonwealth of Israel, as the ESV calls it. We're strangers to the covenants. The covenants belong to Israel. We have no hope. We had no hope. We didn't have God in the world. We were just separated, totally separated. And obviously that separation happened, early on in biblical history. When you go back to Genesis chapter 11, you see that the Tower of Babel is being built, and God separates the languages. He basically makes sure that all of humanity is spread out over the whole world, and then he continues with one man and his family, which is obviously Abraham, and then he decides to basically fulfill his plan through Abraham, and then through Abraham's descendant, one day he would open up the door for all the other nations to come back into Yahweh's inheritance, to come back into God's family, and this is basically Paul is basing his train of thought on that notion as well here. And then he continues a little more positive. Verse 13, "But now in Christ Jesus, in Messiah Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, our shalom." If this would have been written in Hebrew, it's the word irene in the Greek. "Who has made us both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinances, that he might create in himself one new man in place of the two, so making peace." So I love this whole idea that Jesus is actually the one who brings the two groups together. There's this fundamental separation in all of humanity between Jew and non-Jew. This is the most important distinction, ethnic distinction that you could think of. Obviously, there's way more that are important, that are creating issues in the world, but this is the most basic one that Paul talks about, and it goes all the way back to God choosing Abraham. But I love how Jesus is the central figure. He brings the two groups together. And so this is verse 15. "So he makes verse 15, by abolishing the law of commandments, express an ordinance that he might create in himself one new man, one new humanity in place of the two, so making peace, and might reconcile us both to God in one body through the cross, thereby killing the hostility. We've become one body. This is a really important distinction, because I never got this as a Gentile believer. I always thought, the church is so brilliant, and our Jewish friends, they're welcome in God's kingdom by becoming part of the church. Our Arab brothers are welcome to become part of the church by just joining us as non-Jews. But it's actually the other way around. If you also look at Romans chapter 11, that we're grafted onto the olive tree of faithful Israel, and then as well, in other places like Colossians is also speaking about this. We move in with the Jews. We become part of the citizenship of Israel. It's not the other way around, that the Jews can join us, and we have to, if we're Gentiles, we have to get a grip on this whole perspective, because if we don't, then, Romans 11 speaks about, ignorance of God's promises to Israel. It speaks about arrogance towards Israel, because we think we're better than they are. And we got to remember, we are grafted into the olive tree of Israel. And that's basically what Paul's saying here as well, that we no longer have to be alienated from the commonwealth, from the citizenship of Israel. We become part of that, which is awesome. And let's go back to verse 17. And Jesus came and preached peace to you who are far off, and peace to those who were near. We were the ones who were far off, and obviously the Jews were the ones who were near. For through him we both have access in one spirit to the Father. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you're fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure being joined together grows into a holy temple in the Lord. In him you are also being built together into a dwelling place for God by the Spirit. I can't spend much time on this, but this whole picture of us, this beautiful picture of unity that Paul paints here in Ephesians, but also in other places. We are supposed to be one body with the Jews in Yeshua, in Jesus. And the thing is, like I said earlier, as Gentiles, we often don't realize that we move in with Israel into their house instead of the other way around. And this is one of the things that the Lord has really been revealing to me. It's phases of revelation that the Lord is giving you over time. And I understood this, but more and more I start to understand it, to really understand it. And it becomes it's firmly rooted in your heart. And this is also why, why we organize these conferences, like the one we did in the Netherlands last January, like the one we're going to do next week in South Africa, and all the various seminars or roundtables that we're doing in the cities. It's all about this one message. And if we separate ourselves from our Jewish brothers and sisters, we are not in a good place. We got to realize we're one body, and so I believe there's a important task that we have as Gentile believers, to do everything we can to draw near to our Jewish brothers and sisters in Yeshua, but to also love our non-believing Jewish friends in Israel and around the world. And it's sometimes a bit of a challenge, because just talking about the Netherlands, we used to have over 100,000 Jewish people living here before World War II. Now, most of those have been killed in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. And after World War II, only I think our population went down to about 5,000 people spread out over the whole country. So there's not a whole lot of Jews out there in our nation. In other countries, thankfully, there are way more Jews. Like I just think of Austria. My wife's from Austria. If you look at the city of Vienna, if you go to the airport and you take the flight to Israel, to Tel Aviv, There's always a group of of Orthodox Jewish believers there praying and doing all the things that they're doing. So there's a big Jewish community there. The same is true in Antwerp, in our neighboring country, Belgium. And so there's pockets of Orthodox Jewish believers, but I believe really our task is, and if you can't do this on a local level, do it on a national level, do it on a global level, like we're doing here in Kingdom Alliance. Seek those heart connections, those that true fellowship from the heart with your Jewish brethren. The Lord, built this connection between me and the Wilbers, but they're both on the call right here. And we became really good friends in 2019, and through some difficult situations, we only became stronger friends over time. And back in 2022, when we were relaunching Kingdom Alliance, I asked Paul and Nate, like, hey, who do we have in Israel? Because I believe that in the time we're in, and in what is going to take place in the near future, on the track towards the return of Christ, some of the key things, one of the key things is that we become Jerusalem-centric, we become Zion-centric as a church, as a church of the Gentiles. Like we truly realize that it's not about Hilversum, where our initial church is, or Jacksonville. Some of us are from Jacksonville, Florida, or Paris, or any other country, city or country. It's all about Jerusalem. This is where Jesus will come back. This is where he'll set up his throne. And all the promises, they relate to Zion. They don't relate to Mecca or any other place on the planet Earth. And so we gotta be, not only be grafted into faithful Israel, we have to make sure our message becomes Zion-centric, it becomes Jerusalem-centric. And this is what we're all about. This is why we're doing the tour to South Africa. If you're around, we would love to host you. We'd love for you to be part of that. It starts on Wednesday in Johannesburg, and then we do a 2-day conference in Limpopo province, north, and then we go to Durban and Cape Town. It's going to be awesome. But we really, especially in the time we live in right now, with South Africa having this legal case at the International Court of Justice in my country, in The Hague, against Israel, based on soul lies. When we had our conference back in January with Usher and Trader there, and Paul was there, and Nate and Simon and a couple of, Pastor Robert, and we were all there in the room, and we just sensed like this is such a stain on South Africa. And we really sense in our hearts, we got to go over there. We got to make almost like a prophetic declaration on South African soil that land belongs to Yahweh as well, that land also belongs to him. And not to Islam or any other gods or a fake version of Christianity. It's supposed to be land devoted to the Lord. So that's why we're going there. That's why we want to set foot on the soil, on South African soil, and proclaim a message that is like antithetical to what has been preached at the International Court of Justice. And we believe the Lord's going to use it in a mighty way. I have no clue how he's going to do it, but I know it's very prophetic and very powerful. It's going to be an amazing time in the presence of the Lord. And so anyway, if you have questions about it, feel free to ask that. Pastor Simon has all the details. I know quite a bit as well. The Lord has given us connection with the Messianic movement in Zimbabwe, Messianic Jewish movement in Zimbabwe, as well as in Ethiopia. We're trying to get these leaders to come over. So we need to pray for the visa of Samuel from the Messianic movement in Ethiopia, because he is struggling to get his papers at the moment. But the Lord can make sure it comes through. And so all these things are happening right there. And let me just read to you our mission statement as Kingdom Alliance. I'm going to put it in the chat as well, so you can read along. This is very important stuff. Where is the chat? Right there. Here. Kingdom Alliance is called to be a catalytic movement that gives a clarion call to the whole body of Messiah, consisting of Messianic Jewish and Gentile believers from all nations, to unite as one new man. You see the connection with the passage we just read from Ephesians. And our vision, which is, there's still work to be done on that vision statement because we believe that the Lord is putting together people that can add to this and make this very specific also for their nations. But this is the vision statement. Our vision is to be an apostolically led, vibrant global family of congregations, ministries, and leaders that come together for worship, prayer, and sound teaching, equipping them to bring in a kingdom harvest. Right there. So that's the mission and the vision for Kingdom Alliance. And so our plan really is to strengthen our leadership team, our global leadership team, and we would love, we're really praying that every region of the world will get their own like apostolic leadership teams of, really seeing the fivefold ministry active there. I'm looking at Western Europe right now. There's a couple of leaders that I'm closely connected with that have a similar heart. I'm hoping the same for the US, for Southern Africa, maybe for Eastern Africa, for different parts. And we're strongly connected to Tikkun Global, which is basically their vision is the same as our vision. This is Asher and Trader and Ariel Blumenthal. I thought Ariel was going to be on the call, but I don't see him. So their vision is basically the same as ours. The only difference is that our prime goal is actually to help those leaders and ministries that don't have a clear revelation yet about Israel and about the Jewish people, to actually help them and then bring them into relationship also with, networks like Tikkun Global. Because I remember from a few years ago, I had no revelation about Israel. I wasn't against Israel, but I had no relationship. If then somebody comes to me that is all about Israel, I was like, oh, this is a little too much. So we're hoping as Kingdom Alliance to be like an interface for the Gentile world, to bring them into a biblical understanding of the end times, of Israel, of the one new man, of all these different things that we feel strongly about, so that they can embrace it